Hello and welcome to the Success Grid podcast with your host Sanjari. I am excited to introduce you to a series of conversations with some of the most successful and inspiring individuals from various industries. My aim is to dive into the stories behind their success and explore the knowledge, strategies, habits, mindsets, and wisdom that have propelled their success. Each episode of the Success Grid podcast will feature a different guest who will share their unique journey, the challenges they faced, and the lessons they have learned along the way. I will also be covering topics from entrepreneurship and innovation to leadership and personal development. Whether you are an inspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business professional, or just someone looking to improve your life, the Success Great podcast is for you. My goal is to bring you valuable insights and inspiration that will help you achieve your own success in business and life. So get ready to learn and be inspired. The Success Great podcast starts now. In this episode, I have with me Matthew Sanjari to talk about building by design and how to measure what you manage by data-driven decisions. After a life-altering accident derailed his career and life, Matt spent much of the next decade overcoming chronic pain, depression, and disability to become a serial entrepreneur and transformative figure in the business world. As the founder of Prime Consulting, he leverages over 15 years of business ownership and public speaking experience to empower entrepreneurs and business leaders through coaching and consulting, focusing on pragmatic strategies for scaling businesses and achieving personal growth. So, Matt, welcome to the Success Secret podcast.
Thanks for having me, Hussein. I'm excited to have a good conversation.
I am glad you are joining me for this one. So, first of all, because this is the Success Secret podcast, you've been in business over 15 years now. What does success means to you, and what do you see other people around you or people you work with have certain misconceptions around what success is?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think for me, success looks like leaving people and businesses better than I found them. And so I think that it's a good mantra to have, not just in business, but in life. I want to leave everything better than when it first came to me. And I do think that that's a disconnect that a lot of people have. You know, we often think success looks like $1 million, or it looks like a dollar amount, or it looks like, I drive a really nice car. The problem with a lot of those things is those things can come and go, right? Success can be fleeting if it's measured by that. And I'd much rather measure success by the impact and the legacy we leave.
Cool. So you do believe in leaving a legacy behind you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in that.
Okay, so speaking of legacy, if we are going to have a legacy, we need to have some kind of a blueprint, a framework, design, some kind of design to do that. So why do you talk about building by design, and what do you mean? What do we mean actually by design? And we talk about design. Usually, design is attributed to architects, I guess. Maybe. So
Yeah, no, hey, that's a great question. Look, at the end of the day, we're all going to live, right? We're all living, we're all building, whether we realize it or not. We're building our lives, we're building relationships. And at the end of the day, you're either building by default or you're building by design. And so when you build by default, you're just letting life happen to you. You just go through your day, you go to your job, you hang out with your family. All of those things are going to happen. You hang out with your friends. So that's default. But default will only get you what everyone else achieves. So if you want to live a different kind of life, you need to live a life by design. And I like to use the analogy, you brought up an architect. I love using the analogy of building, right? At the end of the day, if you want to build a house, right? Let's say you have this idea in your head or in your heart. It's the goal of a designer or an architect to take that and put it on paper. Because if it just stays in your heart or your head and you start directing people, man, we're going to be in trouble. Okay. We're going to be in trouble because there's no measurements in your head, right? There's no data in your heart. And so we need to get that onto paper. We need to quantify those things. And in the same way, I challenge us, why don't we do the same with our business and our lives? Because that blueprint, that design, when the contractor or the construction guy comes and he says, hey, I want to put a pool in the middle of your living room. And we go, hey, that's a ridiculous idea. That's not on the design. The reason we can say that is because it's not in the design. The design is very specified. It lays out the instructions. It lays out the measurements, what's good. It's been thought over. It's been designed. And in the same way, I want us to see more people including myself, live lives that are designed, that are off of a blueprint that they designed. And I think that that's the proper way, because we can make adjustments to the design, but we at least always have a framework that we can come back to.
I like that you separated the two, like default and design. Like we generally live life by default, which is like, and then after a few years, we ask ourselves why we are here at this place, right? So this is not a good thing to have, but at the same time, it's good to have, let's say, a plan or a design for it. Now we know that life happens in general in our business or life, that there are certain things that we cannot control out of our hand. But the having or the purpose of having this kind of a design gives us an opportunity to have, like you mentioned, a better business or a better life. And also, if certain things that happen, like for example, things that we cannot control, maybe in this design or this plan, we have some kind of a maybe solution for it to not just be reactive, but be proactive, I guess.
I love that what you just said, because at the end of the day, when we live by default, everything is reactive. Life, you're right, life happens. Disappointment happens, rejection happens, loss happens. But when we live by default, everything is reactive. So I'm at the mercy of what it is that's happening to me. When I live by design, I have a plan. And when something happens that I didn't plan for, I now get to make the decision what I'm going to do, right? Will I adjust my plan? Will I move it? Will I create another plan? I at least have some say in what I get to do, and I get to take ownership and control over my life and my business. And I think that that's really, really important. And it's the difference between living by default or by design is I'm not just going to let life happen to me. I'm going to make life happen the way I generally want to see it happen.
Yeah, definitely. We need to make life happens for us, not to us, I guess. So now I one of the important things in business or life is decisions or choices. How do we measure these kind of things in our design? Like how do we measure the choices, how good they are, or the decisions, how good they are? Are there certain things that we should look at as humans to know that these things have, let's say, metrics? Like you mentioned that we should have it on paper, we don't have it in our body. Yes, our brain is better than any supercomputer in regards to what can understand and memorize and whatever if we use our human potential in general, but we need to also have some things on paper, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm a big believer that you should always put things on paper. Listen, your brain is great. Your head is important. Your heart is important. But at the end of the day, you will forget things because you are a human being, right? Things will happen, details will be missed, whatever. And so let's get things onto paper. But when you talk about making decisions, at the end of the day, we're all emotional beings. Some of us are better at that than others. That's okay. But what we want to do is we want to come to a place where our decisions are not driven by emotions, they're driven by intelligence. And so when I say I want to make data driven decisions, I want to be able to say, man, when I look at my bank account, you know, for example, I could receive my paycheck and then I could go spend it and then come to a realization, oh, I bought a bunch of nice things, but I have no money left. Why? I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a budget, or I didn't follow it, whatever. But when I have data and I start to measure what that data is, then I can look at my bank account and say, you know what? I have a habit of spending too much money on food. So you know what? Maybe I need to not spend as much money on food outside of the home, and maybe I'll make more food inside of the home. And just that small tweak, I can save money. Data-driven decisions. And again, the data you want to collect, it's going to depend on every person. For some people, their health is so important. For some people, their finances are so important. I love the first question you asked, because if you want to determine what data you should be tracking and measuring, that actually comes out of what you determine success in. I love asking my clients, I always ask them, I say, what does success look like for you? Because if you tell me, we're saying, okay, well, you know what? Success for me looks like I am very muscular. I look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, guess what? If that's what success looks like to you, then we need to make sure the data we measure is of a lot of health indicators. How much muscle are you putting on? How much are you working out? How much are you eating? Right? So we wouldn't know what to track if we didn't know what success meant to you. And so when we determine first and foremost what success looks like for us, Then we can start to track the data and measure those things that are important to us, financials, health, relationships. And from there, we can make adjustments. Is this working? Is this not working? Can I do this better? But you can't ask those questions and get good answers if you first don't know what it is you're going for and you're not tracking the data. Otherwise, you're just taking a lot of guesses.
So the important of why we are doing is very important. Like, let's say, the purpose of things. This is why we put things first, and then we start having data-driven decisions, because we need the why behind it. And because if we don't know the why, we are not going to know the how, and we are not going to, for example, reach our end goal, right?
Absolutely. Right. I love to say it's the why behind the what. The what is your actions, the why is the purpose. So there's the why, then the what, and then we can figure out the how. But so often we want to go just to the how because we are impatient as humans. And I think it's important that we slow down and we start with the why, because your why is very important. When life happens, as you mentioned, when life gets hard, when disappointment comes, when rejection comes, your how is going to matter less. Your what is going to matter less. Your why is going to become very important. And that's why we see such amazing stories, national heroes, athletes, of people who are like, wow, they're so resilient. There's so much perseverance. It's because there's a why, and that why is strong enough to push past hard times.
For example, like you mentioned, these people have been working, for example, hard for years to achieve certain goal, like to run like 2, 3, maybe 5 races of 100 meters. So it's not like something that it's limited in what they are doing, but they have been practicing for a long period of time. But why do you think, let's say, regular people, regular Joes, are, let's say, maybe afraid or have some certain obstacles, that why we don't have this kind of framework for ourselves, and we keep living by default, like you talked about earlier? Is it that we think that life is like is going to happen to us anyway, and we cannot control it, and we don't really believe in ourselves and our abilities, and we are afraid of multiple things, like afraid of reaching success of whatever that looks like to someone, or we are afraid of failure, we are afraid of humiliation, which is one of the things that a lot of people fear, like being humiliated for whatever matter or subject or topic it is. It's very big deal for people. So what do you think about this?
Listen, everything you said is absolutely true. It could be all of those things. I think the biggest reason why we don't do this is because we divorce logic. We are not attached to the logic, right? I give you the example of in construction, it makes complete sense to have a blueprint, right? Anytime if I want to build a car from scratch, I need to have a blueprint. If I want to build anything, furniture, I need to have a blueprint, right? Even now, businesses are coming more on board with, I need a blueprint. I need a business plan. And so we are so used to having plans and designs everywhere in our lives. When the government or the city wants to put up a building, they don't just point and say, okay, put it up, right? We have to have plans and designs. It feels like oftentimes we're okay living in a world with plans and designs, but yet we divorce ourselves from the logic that it could impact us. And yes, everything you said is true. Humiliation, rejection, all these things, like life happens. But I like to ask the question, would you rather be reactive to those things, or would you rather have some ability to say, I know these are going to happen. I'm going to accept that reality, but I want to be able to be in charge of my own life and have some personal responsibility that I can at least decide how I want to respond and not react.
So that's very important. Do you think that there are some certain framework, in your opinion, that people can, for example, follow in regards to how they can design their life? Because when we talk about design, they would say, I'm not a designer in general, for example, some would say, but it's not just about the design of things that we build, the design of our life, which is the most important thing, I would say, right? It's not a design of a building. Designing our life is the most important. Looking out for yourself, your health, whatever it is that you are looking to build is the most important for any human being, I would assume. So, for example, things that you would say can have certain systems or certain things that we can eliminate or certain things that we can add
to improve our well-being and having life as we look to it to be a great one in the future.
Yeah, great question. Honestly, you don't need to know how to design anything. You just need to ask yourself three questions: why, what, and how. And the why is the most important. So I like to use a framework that is, I'm going to ask why 5 times. Okay. If I ask why 5 times, I'm probably going to get to my actual why. I'll give you an example. Hey, I want to make $1 million. A lot of people want to say that. And I would say, why? Well, I want to live a good life. I want to spend some money. Why? Well, because money buys me freedom. When I have more money, I can own my time because I'm less reliant on work. Why? Well, if I own my time, I can spend more time with my family because my family is important to me. And if I don't have to work as much, I can spend more time with my family. Why? Because growing up, my parents worked a lot to provide for me. I didn't get to spend as much time with them as I wanted to. I asked why 5 times and I got to my actual why. My actual why was not $1 million. My actual why is I want to have the financial freedom that I didn't have growing up and I didn't see my family have growing up. So that's why I want to do what I want to do. Now that I have my why, what? What is it that's going to help me accomplish that why? Is it starting a business? Is it taking more courses in my education? Is it networking? Is it meeting the right people? And then out of that what, I can figure out the how. The how, there's a million different ways. There's so many ways to do it, but it all starts from the why. And so why, what, and how. And when you explore your why, if you can ask the why 5 times and go pretty deep, you're going to figure out pretty quickly.
It's always a start within. Like it always starts within. Everything starts within. And I love that you go 5 levels deep. And it's also great if you can even go deeper than 5 levels. That will even get more out of someone's mind, I would say, or heart to achieve higher things in their lives, which is very important. What do you think are some of the worst advices that you have ever received in regards to designing our life as human beings?
Oof, the worst advice. I don't know. I have to think about that one. You know what? I don't know if it relates to designing life, but I think some of the worst advice that I've heard in regards to success in our lives is the idea that time heals all. With time, I love my father. My father used to have this line where he said, you know what? You grow up and you forget about it. And, and I think there's this idea we get sold that, you know what, when you go through pain or you go through disappointment or something bad happens, don't worry. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you'll forget about it. Time heals all. And I don't think that's true. I think all time does is it allows us to bury, right? All the things of life start to bury these things, but we don't ever forget about it. In fact, those things that you went through, they actually start to come out in your relationships, in your business, in ways that you probably don't know. And so rather than time heals all, I like to guide people and lead people to the idea that no, you choose to heal all. You make the choice to overcome things, to work through things, to be better, to learn from your mistakes. But time doesn't heal all.
Yeah, I actually I actually kind of agree with you on that because with time, the more time passes on, it's like I mentioned, layers and layers gets put above it, but it's actually still there. Like you would know you would think it's like let's say the gold, but it's there. Like you would sometimes go try to dig it because you know it's still there, right under the layers. So you don't wanna do that.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think are some of the best tools, resources, or books for people to check out, in your opinion? Because in general, we need to learn to measure so we can manage better and multiply what we have, right?
Yeah, great. I think Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, is a great resource. It's one that's really, really impacted me. I also think anything, if you want to just become a better person, one of the best things you can do is personal development. So I think anything by John Maxwell, he's one of my favorite authors. If you want to, it's so easy to expect the world to change and just to expect others to change. But sometimes, more often than not, actually, it's actually us that needs to change. And so going down the road of personal development and investing in yourself is a very, very important mechanism. And I promise you, it's worked for me. It's worked for people in my life. If you work on you, you will be amazed to see how your world starts to follow.
I agree with you. Like sometimes if we talk about change, you might see some people need to change, and that might be true in your opinion, for example, in someone's eyes. But the most important thing is ourselves and how we develop as a humans, and if we do want a certain change or not, and progress that. Now, if certain things don't align, if we are, for example, on a different level or in the scale, that's fine. Like we don't have to convince other people to be with us on that same level if we are higher than them. But we don't want it to be lower in our own standards, which is that's very important.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Definitely. So, Matt, where can people learn more about you, see what you do?
Yeah, you can go to my website, consultingbyprime.com. That's consultingbyprime.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I love to chat with people. That's Matthew Sanjari, Sanjari on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Matthew, for being with me on this episode of the Success Gallery podcast. Really insightful things that we talked about, and the important things that we, as a humans, we should live our lives by design and have everything around us by design, because we do not want to be a default setting in a video game. So that's very important. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me, Hussein. Appreciate it.